Hello, I'm Marilyn Hemingway, and welcome to A Gathering Place. I said, I'm stepping back because we have young voices who want to be heard and they're moving on something.
Branding is really important to you and your business.
Even a basic type of technology, you learn it all.
And people are
Good question. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to A Gathering Place, brought to you by the Galakichi Chamber of Commerce and hosted by Marilyn Hemingway. And today we are bringing on our medical expert, Dr. Thaddeus John Bell. Dr. Bell, good to have you as always.
Thank you very much. It's certainly a pleasure being on again with you, Marilyn.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It always is. And Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, at least it was a Happy New Year for about 6 days. And but that's a whole nother topic.
That's a whole nother topic altogether.
Yeah, so we'll save that for another show. But today
That's right.
we're going to talk about COVID. We're going to talk about the rising numbers. We're going to talk about some of these proposals that are out there regarding the vaccine, getting those distribution system together, the variant of the COVID, and also just some general COVID information that we need to know. And of course, to remind everyone to wear a mask, use hand sanitizer, wash your hands, and stay home as much as possible. If you don't have to leave home, stay home, because the numbers are rising drastically. And I think what we're seeing now is the Christmas surge is starting to hit us. And I yesterday I heard we had over 4,000 deaths daily on one day across this nation. And it's just, and we've hit over 2 million cases. And this is just, it's quiet. I think it's become so normalized, and it's a tragedy that could have been prevented, and it's unfolding. And we want people to know what they can do, Dr. Bell, to just get our act together so we can save lives here. So, Dr. Bell, what are your thoughts with COVID? Where do we stand now with COVID? What is going on?
Well, I'm looking at the data that came out from DHAC this morning, and we have over 4,500 new cases reported. We have 52 new deaths since yesterday, and we have a 31.5% positivity rate. So that tells me that COVID prevalence is going up in our community. And it appears as though it's hitting the upper part of the state more than the lower part of the state. I have a very good friend in Lawrence, South Carolina, and I noticed that he posted on Facebook yesterday how the number of cases in his community is going up, and it appears as though the African American people in his community, as well as some white people, are not taking the pandemic seriously. And if the prevalence continues to go up, the hospital is going to be overrun with COVID patients within the next several weeks. They are projecting that the same kind of issues that they're seeing out in California, they are going to be seeing those same kind of issues in his community. And so it's being projected, as you pointed out, that we are going to see the surge from the Christmas holidays, probably next week and the end of the month, and that we'll be running out of hospital beds. One of the things that I don't think that has been given a lot of attention, people make the assumption that we are going to have enough healthcare professionals that are going to be taking care of people. And one of the things that has not been addressed appropriately is that in order for healthcare professionals who are in a ICU, who are making life and death decisions, who are already stressed out, you don't want you don't want a tired nurse who's been on call taking care of people for the past 12 hours, reading and interpreting your medical data to make a decision as to whether or not you need to be put on the respirator, whether or not your blood sugar needs to be taken care of, whether or not you're going into renal failure, and all of the other emergency issues that can come up with COVID patients. And so, yes, we are running out of space, but I can tell you that we are going to be running out of human power as well. And I don't think that patients I don't think that people in the community appreciate that.
I agree with you, Dr. Bell. And I think they don't understand the ramifications of that. It's not just losing those beds because of COVID patients, but once you start losing your healthcare personnel, who's going to take care of those COVID patients? But on the other side of it, who's going to take care of the people coming into your hospital with a heart attack, a stroke, a car accident, the cancer patients who need or people who need surgery because of kidney disease or something?
You're absolutely right. One of the things that's already beginning to happen is that people who need treatment for their cancer, these people are being put on the back burner because there is not enough space, and the doctors and nurses who would be giving that kind of treatment are already stretched out as it relates to the COVID. And you're right, if somebody has a bad automobile accident and they go to the emergency room, they very well may not get treated as expeditiously as they would get treated under ordinary circumstances. And so when you see people walking around in the community not wearing a mask and not social distancing, it tells healthcare professionals that you really don't respect, what I do. And so the ramifications of this is just significant. The other thing that's happening out in California too, and we were always hoping that this would not be the case, because they are running out of oxygen. Can you believe that?
I read the headlines. What does that mean? What's the implication?
The implication is that people who now need to be on respirators. But first of all, let's explain it this way. Oxygen in the emergency setting is a medication. Okay? And so when you don't have enough oxygen in the various canisters to be given to patients, if all of a sudden you're using 3 to 4 times as much oxygen as you would use under ordinary circumstances in the emergency room, then they have already had to bring in the National Guard, with additional canisters of oxygen to be able to pipe into the emergency room because the use of it is so great. So now doctors are going to have to make a decision as to who is likely to survive COVID based on the amount of space and the amount of oxygen that they have. And so if that's your grandmama and she may be 90 years of age and someone else comes in and they may be 45 or 50 years of age, doctors then may have to make a decision whether or not they're going to spend time and give those medications to your grandmama, or they're going to have to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to give it to a younger person who has more of a likelihood of surviving. Doctors don't ever want to be put in that situation, but that's the situation that they're currently seeing out in California now. The other thing that's very morbid, and that is they are having to call in more trucks that store bodies because the undertaker cannot take care of corpse in a meaningful way like they have under ordinary circumstances. So they are having all of these ice boxes put outside of the hospital because the death rate is just so overwhelming.
I have Dr. Bell, a sorority sister who's the family funeral home in California, and she posted the outside their funeral home yesterday, the refrigerator truck.
Right.
That they were finally.
I said ice box. Yeah, refrigerator truck. Yeah.
Yeah. We knew what you were saying, but
yeah.
Continue, please.
Someone someone just posted something regarding Lawrence, South Carolina. Did you see that?
Yeah,
what did that say? The National Guard
has been called in to assist with the COVID surge in Lawrence. So how does that work? When you call in the National Guard, are they calling in more doctors, or are they just calling in support? What support help do they give?
It could be all of the above. They are calling in more nurses. They are calling in doctors to set up tents maybe outside of the hospital so that they can take care of COVID patients, because I would imagine in Lawrence, South Carolina, they probably have a very, very small hospital. And so they are not capable of taking care of this great surge in the number of COVID cases. So the military can be additional support to assist a small town like Lawrence, South Carolina. Now, it's really kind of interesting to me because a lot of people don't even know this. Had you heard that before? Had you heard about the situation in Lawrence?
No.
Carolina?
When you said it, I had not heard. I had heard overall, and in Georgetown, I think there's one ICU bed left,
right.
And that was on Friday.
Right.
Because they announced Friday that they too were running out of beds and were urging people to mask up, stay home.
Yeah, I have a very good friend in Lawrence. His name is Loomis Bird. We are very, very good friends. You know Loomis?
I know Loomis.
Okay.
We're actually birthday twins. Our birthday's on the same day, April 25th.
Okay, and he posted on Facebook about this situation, and one of the things that he suggested was that the people in the community may not have good information to appreciate the seriousness of COVID. So I emailed him via Facebook, and I asked him whether or not there was a radio station that served the urban community, and if there was, I would be willing to send some of my health tips up there so that they could put on the radio to educate African Americans and people in that community. But apparently they do not have a urban radio station, that serves the urban community. But if there's, even if it's not an urban radio station, if there's another radio station that would serve that community so that we can talk directly to people to let them know about the seriousness of the situation. I see you have a map up there, and so Lawrence is right before you get to Greenville, South Carolina.
That's right. That's right. It's right off. Is it 26? Not 26.
It's 85.
85.
Yeah,
when you split 85 to 385, and that's where
right.
Lawrence is. My step grandmother was from Lawrence, so
right.
I know Lawrence. And what's interesting, what people don't think about, Lawrence is right off a major interstate, and it's in between two major cities, so you have traffic going through there also.
Right.
People don't think about that, but that's even more exposure. You could travel to a hot spot and may not come up down with symptoms. You're asymptomatic. You take it back home or you take it to other places. So this thing is just spreading. It's
right.
Just,
and of course, I think the point that he was trying to make is that there is a lack of information and a lack of understanding. And I see a note there, but so if you have a lack of information, and if nobody is constantly reminding you that you need to continue wearing a mask, social distance, and wash your hands as often as you can, if that information is not constantly given, to the community, particularly a rural community, then you're going to see an explosion. And interestingly enough, Marilyn, it has been suggested that we are going to see a proliferation of COVID in the rural community for that very same reason. And South Carolina is a rural state. And so the lack of information in the rural community, it's been well documented that because of the lack of information, people are not being as careful as they should. And that's, interestingly enough, that's also going to be an issue when it comes to the distribution of vaccines. How are we going to get the vaccines out to the rural community?
Rural areas.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a very interesting problem, and I think that it's going to get worse. As the old people say, it's going to get worse.
Before it gets better.
It's going to get worse in our communities before it gets better.
That's right. And we need to truly understand that and play a part in hoping we could end this as fast as possible and mitigate that. And this map that I'm showing, it's the hot spots in our state. And the darkest areas are where the numbers are just surging. And those are rural counties.
Right.
The entire state is a hot spot. I think South Carolina is reflective of the nation in how this thing spread. Everybody was thinking New York, these urban areas. That's where it hit first on the East Coast, the urban areas of New York and California. But in the rural areas, we kind of took it for granted. We're spread out. We don't.
And you
can see it how it went across the nation. It's the same way it went across South Carolina.
Right, and the other thing that is not talked about as frequently, and I need to remind people that South Carolina is one of the worst states in the nation when it comes to health disparities. So you have more people in South Carolina with pre-existing conditions that put them at risk for getting COVID if they are exposed to it. In fact, DHAC just recently posted some data showing that most of the patient, about 45% of the patients that died from COVID had the pre-existing condition of heart disease. Now, they didn't say whether or not these people were African Americans or people of color or the underserved. But Marilyn, all you have to do is connect the dots. The next condition that was the pre-existing condition that predisposed people to early death if they got COVID was sugar. So you know that when you put all of that information together, we are going to see an increase in the number of deaths. We already know that African Americans are more likely to die from COVID 3 times as great as our white counterparts. And we are more than 4 times as great to get it. And those numbers are constantly changing and moving up. It just depends on who you're reading at that point in time. So it doesn't look good, Marilyn.
Well, we're going to do all we can, bring folks on like you, Dr. Bell, to educate folks and let them know what's going on. And of course, encourage, wear those masks, wash your hands, use hand sanitizer, and stay home. And if you have to go out, 6 feet apart. I've noticed myself that we're getting lax, and we can't do that. We just simply can't do that. So, Dr. Bell, let's talk about what I've been hearing about these variants, the variant in the COVID. Can you explain what that is? And I encourage everyone to go to cdc.gov to learn more also. But can you explain the variant in COVID?
All right. The variant is just a mutation of the original virus. In other words, it is not uncommon for viruses or bacteria to change during their evolution. I guess the best way to explain it, Marilyn, let's just take a bacterial infection. By the way, COVID is not a bacteria, but I want to use this as an example. You know, when people get infected with a throat infection, and they start taking a lot of antibiotics, and then all of a sudden the doctor will say, hey, you know, that throat infection that you had is resistant to penicillin now. In other words, penicillin won't work anymore. Why won't the penicillin work anymore? The penicillin won't work anymore because the organism that caused the infection has mutated, has changed, has become resistant to the antibiotic. So the virus has changed. Now, what we are finding out is that, as far as I know, the variant has not shown up in South Carolina yet, but it has shown up in states in our neighboring states. Mm-hmm. It is in the United States. And the reason that we were concerned about it is because it was suggested that if the virus changed, that the vaccine that we are currently being given would no longer affect that virus. Well, I'm happy to say, and I'm happy to report that based on early data, they have looked at the changes that the virus has made, and they have studied the vaccines, the 2 vaccines that are currently being given. And it is felt, at least today, that those vaccines will take care of that mutation that the virus has made will take care of that variant. The reason that it caused so much concern is because we found out that you are more likely to get the variant. And if you're more likely to get it in the right situation, you are more likely to die from it. But and that's why it's so so much attention has been given to it. But thankfully, the vaccine that has been developed will check that variant as we go forward. So that's what that means.
So my question, it leads me to ask, is this going to operate kind of like the flu? Or we don't have enough information yet where, every year you got to get a flu shot because the flu mutates also?
That's an excellent question, because that's exactly why you have to get the flu shot every year, because the flu changes. And so what they have been putting in the flu shot, they've had to change it a little bit. But that's an excellent question. Unfortunately, Marilyn, we don't have enough data for me to give you a better answer than what I've already given you. Because, as I continue to remind people, this virus continues to operate in real time, and we are learning information about it in real time. Even the side effects that is causing people who get it, we are still learning about in real time.
Yeah, because I've been reading about people getting different side effects, but they're coming up positive. My personal situation is my brother who lives in Arkansas, and his wife, they both had COVID. He got it at work, and he had migraines, bad headaches, and achiness. But basically, 2 weeks, quarantine, dealing with it, got through it. His wife, it hit her much harder. Totally different symptoms, side effects, and everything. And they both got through it, but it was amazing that, he took it to her, but her reaction to it was totally different.
I saw a young woman about 2 weeks ago. I was asked to evaluate for disability purposes. She was a young woman who had gotten COVID and was a college grad, and the COVID affected her cognitive status very, very significantly. Cognitive means her ability to remember, her ability to think, her higher intellectual functionings. She has been significantly diminished to the point where she now has to depend upon her sister to handle all of her personal business. She can't even manage her checkbook anymore. Okay, so what we are finding out is that everybody who gets COVID does not recover and live happily ever after, which is sometimes the impression that you might get from the news. People can get COVID and they can have a plethora of side effects. The interesting thing is we don't know how long these side effects are going to last. And here's something that's really interesting, Mel, and I know the ladies will be interested about this. One of the new side effects from COVID after patients get it is that their hair begin to fall out. That's right. Some women's hair begin to fall out. And so in addition to losing taste and losing smell and losing hearing, we are now noticing that the COVID will cause patients' hair to fall out. We don't know whether it's going to come back, and we don't know how long that's going to happen, because as I pointed out, all of these things are new. But it can definitely cause a change in a patient's mental status. And so those are just some of the kinds of new things that we are finding out about COVID.
I've read about the mental status, the psychosis, and actually read about it in the last 2 weeks. And there were even some cases where folks appeared to be recovered and fine after they went through their COVID episode, and then months down the road got slammed with some kind of psychosis, issue,
Right.
mental health issue related to COVID, and they had no clue. I mean, it's a brand new world when it comes to this COVID thing, and people were like talking about taking their lives or seeing hallucinations and stuff.
Right.
So this somehow is getting into your brain. And
we are finding out that COVID has caused some early dementia, and it is causing a lot of neurological symptoms, which we don't quite understand. So, Marilyn, it's going to be a whole new textbook.
Yeah.
COVID has caused so many different things. It's going to be a whole new textbook of people who probably just specialize in just the symptoms of COVID.
So we're going to go on from this, but I do want to ask this quickly. I don't know if it's a question or a comment. Let me just get it out. So say I have COVID, but I'm asymptomatic. That means I have COVID, but I'm asymptomatic. Do they know yet, say 2 months down the road, will I develop psychosis even though I did not present any symptoms?
I don't know the answer to that question, but if you are asymptomatic, it certainly does not mean that you're going to stay asymptomatic. You may be asymptomatic for that point in time. At some point in time, there's a good possibility that you will develop the symptoms. I would imagine that there will be some patients who won't develop any symptoms, but they will continue to be detrimental to people who come in contact with them.
Yeah.
So that's the best that I can do with that question.
Well, I think people just stay away from folks, practice social distancing and wear those masks.
I'll tell you what I'm hearing from some of my, I have a very good friend, Dr. Larry Ferguson, who's a well-respected dentist here in town, and he has told me that people have come to see him who have told him that they were exposed to COVID, and he has immediately sent them out. So that tells me that a lot of people, perhaps a lot of African Americans, don't really appreciate how much they should consider being exposed to COVID as something very, very real. And so if you expose, you're going to have to isolate, and you're going to have to isolate for the 10 or 12 days. But a lot of people may get that information that they've been exposed, and as long as they don't have symptoms, they're just going to continue operating. And of course, this is where the lack of information gets to be very, very important. So in the African American community, I'm recommending that, look, you need to talk to people, and everybody that comes in my office, I ask them, have you been exposed to COVID? Has anybody in your immediate family told you, that they had COVID? Because And if you have a suspicion, have you asked? So I think that, as African Americans, we have to go a little bit further because, Black people have always been hesitant about telling other people about their medical issues. Marilyn, I've been practicing medicine for 45 years. I know how Black people act, and I know that, we won't always tell you the truth about our health issues. I mean, that was one of the main reasons that we were having such a serious issue with HIV, because people were not being honest with folks. So I think that you're going to have to go a little bit further by asking the right questions and trusting your intuition. If you know somebody's out there and they're not doing the right thing, you may not want to have that person around you.
That's right. That's right. We just got to start using some common sense.
Absolutely.
And asking the right questions. So let's move on to the vaccine and what's going on with that. But before we do, I want to remind everyone that you are watching A Gathering Place, brought to you by the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce and hosted by Marilyn Hemingway. And today's topic with Dr. Thaddeus John Bell is COVID, the variants of COVID and the vaccine, and these different proposals we hear out there regarding that vaccine and the vaccine rollout. And I want to start, Dr. Bell, with your own personal story. You have had the vaccine. So can you tell me what your experience was like, and tell me which vaccine did you have, and did you get to pick? Did you get to pick the vaccine, or is that the vaccine that your provider received and then can you tell us about your experience?
Well, as a healthcare professional, and I'm on the staff of Roper St. Francis Hospital. So all of the doctors at Roper St. Francis Hospital, because we are in phase 1, which means that we are healthcare professionals on the front line, and so therefore we were eligible to get the vaccine. So I got my vaccine, I think on the 22nd of December, right before Christmas. I got the Pfizer vaccine, so that means that I have to wait 3 weeks before I get the next vaccine. I put it online, it's on my Facebook. When I got the vaccine, I experienced absolutely no side effects whatsoever. I didn't even experience the tenderness at the injection site that most people experience. I didn't experience anything. I will get the second part of the vaccine tomorrow at 3:00. I expect, Marilyn, that I'm going to experience some minor side effects based on what I have read that other people have experienced. I'm anticipating that I may have some tenderness, that I may have a little fever, and that I may have a little fatigue. But I'm also thinking that and hoping that those side effects are going to be short-lived and that I'll be able to go to work the next day. But I'm looking forward to getting it, and I'll be tweeting about it, and I'll be putting the results on my Facebook. And I think I will be filming it, and so I'm encouraging my patients to get it. It's kind of interesting, Marilyn. I've been talking to all of my patients about it, and I've been pleasantly surprised that all of them have said to me, now that you've gotten it, I feel comfortable and that I'm going to get it too. So
very good.
I think that having your healthcare provider and trusting your healthcare provider does make a difference. And I hope that for those folk who don't have a healthcare provider who will talk to them about the vaccine, I'm definitely endorsing the vaccine. I can tell you that of the 5 million healthcare providers across the country who have gotten the vaccine, it's been less than 50 reported cases of any major side effects. Out of 5 million, less than 50 reported cases of any side effects. So I think that you can say based on that data that the vaccine is safe. And then, of course, I have seen several webinars, and I've talked to and listened to my colleagues from all over the country. I've listened to Dr. Fauci countless numbers of times, and I've looked to the young woman, Dr. Kessamy Corbett, who was on television the night before last, a very bright and African-American scientist who played a major role in helping to develop the protein that's responsible for the immune reaction. I heard her explanation as to how it works. And so I feel very, very comfortable saying to the public that I feel that the vaccine is safe, and I feel that you definitely should take it when the opportunity affords you.
Very good. I plan on taking it also, Dr. Bell. I already stated that, and but my question is, when will I take it? How do I know? Do I inform my provider, hey, I want to take the vaccine, or do they just call you and say, we've got you scheduled to come take a vaccine? What's the process for me who's just a patient? Who's not
well, that's an excellent question, because well, let me point out to the public that each state sets up the schedule for how the vaccine is going to be dispensed. They are supposed to be using as a guideline the guideline that comes from the CDC. And that guideline is changing. The guideline that is currently being used, DHEC is giving the vaccine in phases. Phase 1A, which is the phase which I was able to get it under because of being a healthcare professional, and also the people who are in phase 1A are people who live in nursing homes or long-term health facilities. But this is the issue. Recently, we found out that getting the vaccine into people's arm using the current guidelines that we are using is taking too slow. Okay, so I would imagine that all of that's going to change when President Biden comes in, because he's already said that he's going to make the vaccine available to everyone. He's going to, with reference to African Americans, I've heard him suggest that he's going to put the vaccine in places that we are more likely to be able to get it. For an example, in grocery stores, in church halls, in places that African Americans are more likely to frequent, instead of just using the CVS and Walgreens and other places. He's going to, put it in the rural area, in rural healthcare or community centers. So I would say we are looking at a process that's in evolution. And so just be patient, because I think the process after January 20th is going to dramatically change. That's what I think is going to happen. It's going to dramatically change. But right now, we are still in phase 1. We're going to be in phase 1 for about another week. And then we are going to go to phase 1B. And phase 1B is supposed to be the essential workers, firefighters, policemen, bus drivers, people who work in the grocery store, et cetera, et cetera. I think if you want more details, you can go to the CDC or you can go to the DHAC website and it'll tell you. But I think that all of that is going to change as soon as President-elect Biden goes into office.
Yeah, because he's proposed that, as you said, to just what they have in supply now is just to get it out.
That's right.
I know there's been some concern that once they get it out, will production be able to keep up? Because then you go back to that second dose. And
Right.
they don't know. Dr. Fauci, I saw him either last night or this morning. Days are split, they tend to blend together now. That he was saying his concern was people getting the second dose 2 or 3 months down the road, and that may impact the effectiveness. Then there was another doctor, Dr. Jha, who I think that's his JAHR, something like that, who was not as concerned about that. He was concerned, but thinks that the companies will be able to produce the vaccine fast enough that it does not get behind.
I think that Dr. Fauci is saying right now that he thinks that we should stick with the science, that it has been proven that it takes 2 shots for the vaccine to be effective, and that folks should get the 2 shots. It has been suggested by some people that maybe just 1 shot will work. Dr. Fauci is saying, no, that's not what the science says, and we're going to stick with the science. And I'm agreeing with Dr. Fauci.
And let me put this question back up because it's slightly different. And let me explain how I take this. Is there enough science out there to quantify the usage of half dosage versus full? Is the efficacy different? Is the potency different? Is the half better for one subset than it is another? And when I first heard that, Dr. Bell, I did hear that in the news. And thank you, Sheldon, for that question. I thought, instead of that first full dose, that they were going to cut it in half and give it to you. And I don't know about that. Well, and plus I have issues with this current administration. So already, I'm like, y'all, but what do you? Yeah.
Well, one of the things I want to point out to people is that the administration had nothing to do with the development of the vaccine. You need to understand that. The administration had nothing to do with the science. The science was done independent of the administration. And the science actually started before this administration came into power, okay? So the science that we have been doing over the past 10 years, see, that's the other thing, and I think I explained that the last time we were on, that the science for this vaccine didn't just start a year ago. The science and the nuances of the science started 10 years ago and maybe even further. What they did is they just went into a warp speed of developing the vaccine because of COVID, all right? And based on the clinical trials that have been done to prove the efficacy of the vaccine, we cannot say that just giving one vaccine is going to work because we don't have the clinical trial data to suggest that it'll work like that. We only have clinical trial data in which we've given the vaccine twice at certain periods of time. I think it's 3 weeks for the Pfizer, and for the Moderna is 23 days. And so that's the data that we have. And so and I'm not surprised that Dr. Fauci has said that this is the way that it should be done. I mean, he's a world-class scientist. He's been doing this for a mighty, mighty long time, and he has the respect of people around the world. I mean, and so, if Dr. Fauci said that's the way we should do it, I think that's the way we gonna be doing it.
I agree with you, Dr. Bell, because one thing I know, Dr. Fauci has been steady.
Yes.
He has been steady throughout this whole thing, and he has admitted what he does not know, he doesn't know. But when
Right.
we know better, I'm going to share it with you. And I think this is where Dr. Deborah Birx, who was on the task force, where she messed up, is
That's
that
right.
people lost confidence in her because she wasn't willing to stand up and fight for the science.
That's right.
And unfortunately, professionally, I think she paid a price for it. And
Oh,
we were
she's
talking
paid
about
him.
that
Yeah.
before the show. And
Yeah.
she, the last thing I heard is she announced that she was going to retire.
Yes.
And then we haven't heard anything else from her. It's an unfortunate situation. So we're getting close to wrapping up here. But I want to wrap up with our last topic with COVID is our good friend, Senator Marlon Kimpson. He's been speaking out regarding, I believe, the South Carolina distribution of the vaccine and his thoughts about it. And you tell us a little bit more about that, Dr. Bell.
Marlon, Senator Marlon Kimpson is a very good friend of mine, and I must let you know that he has been a friend of Closing the Gap ever since we started it 17 years ago. But Senator Kimpson has noticed that there have been a number of people in stage 1A who have not gotten the vaccine, and as a result, we have a surplus of vaccines. And he is saying, hey, look, since those people don't want to take it, then let's move on and give it to somebody else and send those people to the back of the line. That's in fact what he is saying. So he is putting pressure on DHEC to maybe change the guidelines to make sure that the vaccine gets out rapidly and to a greater number of people. And let's not be so rigid with the guidelines that we are currently using, since it appears as though there have been some people who don't want to take it. And as a result, at the place where we are now, we haven't used all of the information. We have not used all of the vaccine that has been available to us up to this point. So Senator Kimpson is saying, hey, we need to move on. We need to get this vaccine into people's arms so that these people can get treated. And so he's been fairly outspoken on that, and I'm glad that he has. And I think that it's something to watch. That information is probably going to change.
Which, that's interesting. Thank you for explaining that for me. I saw him putting some stuff out, but did not understand, the deep dive into it to understand what was going on. And that's shocking to me, because I would have thought that when they were developing the distribution plan and you're looking at the algorithms of, if this happens, what will happen here? If this happens, is it a no or yes? What's our response? That someone didn't sit there and say, well, if we have an abundance here for this reason, we roll it over to the next group so we can get as many people vaccinated as fast as possible. So somewhere in there, the ball was dropped. So kudos to Senator Kimpson for putting that out there and putting it out in the public so we can have some pressure, have some transparency and accountability. That's a little bit of common sense there. Kudos to him.
And Marilyn, one of the things I want to point out is that all African Americans now still don't trust this vaccine. So we still going to have a significant number of African Americans and people of color who are still going to wait. The last time I looked at the data, there was still about 46% of of Black people just across the country who still did not believe or still did not trust the science. It's getting better, and I think that that's why you have seen and you will see a number of African American healthcare providers being on national television and local television encouraging African Americans to get the vaccine, because there is no question that what Black doctors say matter. And you still have not only Black doctors, Marilyn, we are recommending that Black pastors, anybody who has, any African American who has the respect of the African American community, we are encouraging those people to speak out, to let it be known that you do trust the science. And because we know that there is still a significant amount of distrust of African Americans and the underserved population as it relates to this vaccine. So I think that that's going to be very, very important. But Senator Kempson is usually on top of things like that.
He is. He's
Yeah.
one of the more progressive state senators in South Carolina, very, very well versed on whatever topic he decides he's going to put his interest in on behalf of his community. So he is someone that we can trust.
Right.
And I want to remind folks that Dr. Bell has been coming on our show for quite a while. And the last time he was on the show, just before Christmas, he went into the Tuskegee experiment. And how that rolled out, how we found out about it, etc. And it made me feel better. I had always heard about it. I did read about it, but you fleshed out some more information regarding that. And it was good to hear that. And it really kind of comes down that people need knowledge. I think you're, Dr. Bell, living proof with your patients that you've probably spoken to them since this pandemic even started about the pandemic, about the COVID. So when you took your vaccine, they were more comfortable with you taking it, with the information that you had provided for them. So they were ready to take that vaccine. And we have, quickly, out of all the people that I know, there's only one person I have heard of that feels comfortable getting the vaccine. And Renia, thank you for sharing that comment with us. We hope that increases with greater knowledge. And I'll tell you, Dr. Bell, I'm comfortable with vaccines because being a military brat, when you're a military brat, you're young and you're doing a lot of traveling, you get a lot of vaccines.
Well, one of the things that the public does not know, if you have a relative who has been in the military, they already know that vaccines work, and they already know that you don't get the privilege of saying no if you're in the military. You either get the vaccine or you get out, okay? Because vaccines historically, Marilyn, one day I'm going to come on and we're going to talk about the history of vaccines, because vaccines have saved more lives, Marilyn, than any medicine that the medical profession has invented or made. And so there are some dark stories, however, but the bottom line is that vaccines save people's lives. And of course, I'm encouraging people to get the vaccine. I trust the vaccine. My patients know that I've been always talking about vaccines. Even when people didn't want to get the flu vaccine, I've been talking about the vaccine. People don't know that, in South Carolina, we have a significant number of Black people that die from the flu. Because the flu can cause people to have heart attacks. A lot of people think that the flu is just a respiratory problem, but the flu in elderly people is a major cause of heart attacks. A lot of people don't know that. So sometimes at another point in time, we'll have to talk about the history of vaccines.
My door is always open to you. Dr. Bell. So we got that. We're gonna get that on the schedule this year, and we're gonna
Okay.
talk about vaccines. And there's a whole lot that we need to talk about in healthcare. And I want to remind everybody that Dr. Bell has his own nonprofit, Closing the Gap in Healthcare. He has been doing this for years, folks, trying to address healthcare disparities in the African American community. Not trying, he's actually doing the work. And if you drive down in Charleston, you're gonna hear him on a radio station.
Y'all don't hear me.
Yeah.
Y'all should be hearing me. Y'all should be hearing me over in Georgetown. Y'all don't hear me in Georgetown much?
It depends on what station, and you gotta be
Okay.
heading towards, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But when I was commuting to Charleston, I used to hear you all the time,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I want to encourage everyone to donate to Closing the Gap in Healthcare. Go to their website and learn about healthcare disparities. But he also has a foundation that provides scholarships for those who are in the medical field pursuing the healthcare field. And we want to support that because we need more African Americans in the healthcare field, more African American medical doctors. And he has stepped up for years in trying to help folks pay off their student loans and everything, and we can do our part also. And I made a donation. I hope you got it.
Yes, we did.
I'm gonna make another one too.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm gonna make you that. So I'm encouraging everyone to go to closingthegapinhealthcare.org and make your donation and support Dr. Bell and his program, because what he's doing impacts our community. So we need to help him also help us. And someone is saying on the TV, they've seen you on the TV. So he's been on the TV also out there supporting his community. Dr. Bell, I enjoy having you on. You're so very informative. You give me good stuff. You give us good information.
Well, good.
So thank you for joining me once again. And next time, hopefully, Dr. McIver could join us. He's another one who's been on the show.
I always enjoy being on with Dr. Winston McIver. We go back a long way, and I see myself passing the baton to Dr. McIver, and he is a wonderful person to pass this baton to. So
that's
I know
right.
He's great doctor, a great young man. I'll tell you, I know you've heard this story, but before he started medical school, he and my son were very, very good friends. And right after my son passed away, Winston was the first person at my house, and I never shall forget. When he told me he had been accepted to medical school, I had a brand new dictionary in my study. And I said, listen, I want you to take this dictionary. And I said, before you finish medical school, you're going to know every word in this dictionary. And he looked at me in amazement. And he said, I said, do you remember that? He said, oh, yeah, I still got the dictionary, too. So, yeah.
Well, very good. You did a good job influencing him, because he's a good doctor. And for those of you who don't know, he is the medical doctor for the Coastal Carolina University football team, also doing his own private practice. And I think they had a bowl game this weekend.
Right.
So, yeah, he's doing his thing. They had a really good season. So, Dr. Bell, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. I'm going to let you go. But, we look forward to you coming on next month, maybe, and
absolutely
talk about COVID. And we're going to set aside a show for vaccines, because we need to know. We need to get more educated about healthcare and our medical care so we can make the best decisions.
And be sure and post the video that I'm going to make tomorrow with me getting the second portion of the vaccine.
I'll definitely share that on the Gallagher Chamber Facebook page also. So
okay.
we'll look for it, and we'll make sure that's posted.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. We'll see you later.
All right, dear. Take care.
I want to remind everyone that you've been watching A Gathering Place, brought to you by the Gallagher Chamber of Commerce. And as usual, when we have Dr. Thaddeus John Bell on, we get some great information. In particular, during this time of COVID, and as the vaccine rolls out, the different proposals and plans that are out there. And I hope that you take this information and share it with your family and friends. And I don't have my mask next to me on the table, but I do have my hand sanitizer. And as usual, we always remind everyone, wear a mask, use hand sanitizer, wash those hands, and practice 6 feet apart. Don't be hanging out with folks if you don't have to. And if you don't have to leave home, stay home. Because as I have been saying for quite a while now, when we get together again, we want to make sure that no one is missing. And that means we've got to put the work in, folks. We've got to use common sense and be thoughtful and caring towards ourselves and towards others. Thank you for Marilyn Hemingway, me. We do this every Wednesday and Sunday at 4 o'clock. So we'll see you this coming Wednesday, and having a special topic to help our small businesses in the Black community, and a whole host of other topics to help our entire community. Looking forward to it, folks. Happy New Year, and let's make the best of it. We'll see you on Wednesday. Good night.